Hi everybody, this is Tor Storley and I am back with another video. In this video, we're going to take a look at how you can create great tables from Python. It's originally an R package that now has been modified and put into Python, so you have it both in R and in Python. Today we're going to look at the Python version of this package. So let's get started. Okay, so as you can see, I opened a Python notebook here inside Positron to demonstrate how you create great tables in Positron here using a Quarto file. I first need some data, and one of the tables I created was based on stock data. You can import DuckDB, as you can see here. In case you don't want to do it the way I do it, you can use yfinance. Very easily to work with polars when you work in these great tables. So we're going to import polars. This particular library I used just to get the stock symbols that makes up the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the 30 stock symbols. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to open a connection and so I can persist my database called stocks, and I'm going to put it into this location. And I do that by using DuckDB, connect to it. So let's import the libraries here. And then let's create this connection in DuckDB. Okay, so now we've done that. So as you can see, there's only stocks in here. That's the database. If you do this for the first time, you create a table like this, where you create the table string like this, and you put it into a variable. You use these 3 quotes, and then you execute the SQL statement against the connection you just created. Describe the table and so on. Another thing we can do too is we can figure out what's in this table. And what I already did, I ran all this code and I created the records I'm going to be using for this video. So I'm not going to run it again. But you can see here, if you run this, you're going to get some data back. And I created a few ticker symbols and I loaded 12 months worth of data in here. So I can demonstrate this great table. Now I also created, in order to get data, I have this macro I'm using in DuckDB is called get Yahoo data 1, and I'll pass in a symbol and date interval and a range you're going to bring it in with. And I used this many times before, and if you see my previous videos for DuckDB, you've probably seen me talk about this macro in more details. So I'm not going to dwell on it here, but you can see I'm building basically the call to Yahoo Finance, and I'm using DuckDB's JSON functionality. And then I create a macro and it returns the data and inserts it when I call it. So for example, you can execute the macro SQL like this and then put into a symbol if you want to. I can also just check DuckDB whether this macro was created by running this select statement here. So select function name, macro definition from DuckDB _ functions, where the function name starts with get. And here you can see I'm getting back this get Yahoo data 1. So you can also see here I'm getting the definition, which means the query that is put into this macro, this thing here. So that's one way you can look at it. Then what I do is I go and I create an insert statement and create a Python function here, passing a ticker, and that creates an F string. And so I'm going to insert into the table these fields, and then I'm going to pass it based on the ticker I'm going to pass in. So it's monthly data for 1 year. That's all I want. And then I'm going to execute that SQL and create that function. So in order to actually call this function, then all you really have to do is call the function like this. And what I discovered was I wanted to do this automatically, so it goes, but what I realized is sometimes when you go against the data out there on the internet, there are delays and it doesn't finish properly, and if it finds a problem with a ticker and there's not enough dates and so it starts failing on me. So what I did, just to avoid all that, I just create individual records like this. So I create a ticker, then I comment it out, then I uncomment the next one, and so forth. So when it's all said and done, you're going to see something like this. Now notice there's quotes around here, and you have this S&P 500 ticker that has a hat in front of it. So what I do after that, to clean it up a little bit, I basically do an update on this. But here you can see the actual data. So here is all the monthly data for each of the 12 months in the last year, where the tickers or symbols are in the left-hand column here. So I run a couple of update statements to fix that. So you can see it down here. I'm replacing the quotes here, and I also replaced that hat for the S&P 500. So I also have this CTE that updates the table by creating a rate of return. So I'm using a natural log function here, and I'm taking the adjusted close, divide it on the previous adjusted close, and take the log of that. And you can see here a partition by symbol and order by timestamp. So basically what you're doing here for NVIDIA, you take this price, but you do the adjusted price. So it'd be this one, divided on this one, which is the lag, and then you basically take the natural log of that, and that becomes this number over here. So because I partition by NVIDIA here, and I order by the timestamp, so you get all these in the right order when you do this calculation. And then I simply update the return column and execute that. If you look at the data here, you can see when I select it, because I calculate the rate of return, the first rate of return will never be calculated because it's the first record, because you're starting here and you're dividing on here. So the first one you can get is this one. So what I do is I delete everything that has a return of null. And that's the last step I'm doing down here, as you can see. That's this one. So that's how I get the data. So now I have data inside that stocks table. What I do next then is I create this Quarto file. And here you can see I'm importing a bunch of stuff from Polars. I import it as PL. I use the datetime from Python. I use DuckDB. In case I need to use the operating system, I can import the OS. And another thing that it comes in handy is these selectors as part of the Polar import. And you can call it CS. And then from Great Tables, I import GT function, which basically create the base table. Lock is another module. Style and MD is the markdown. So you can import these different parts from Great Tables. You can go to the website here for posit-dev.github.io Great Tables. And there is an intro you can see here. And it tells you pretty much everything you need to know about how to work with these Great Tables. So as you can see here, you can have a title, a subtitle, and you can have table headers. Stubhead is the top left corner header, if you will. You can create spanner labels, column labels. You have row group labels and row labels, footnotes and source notes. Depending what you want to do, you can attack each one of these parts and build your table accordingly. And as you can see here, they give you data here, how you can get started with this. And this is kind of building this table here. So you have the S&P 500, and that's basically loading this data set here. So here's the title for that by creating a .tab header. And then you can have a subtitle, which is the start date to end date. And notice they put that into these variables here. So you can get, here's the subtitle and here's the main title. And then you can see you can format it. You can format the dates, and you can see the style. And we'll get back to that in a little bit here. You can also fix up the numbers, as you can see, for like volume. You can get it in the billions, and by using this compact as true. So we'll take a look at that as well. So when you look at some of these examples, so here is something, you can look at the code that created that example. So that comes in handy too. And you can see here all the formatting. Another thing you can do too is you can go to reference. So when you're looking for, let's say you want to format your date, for example, then you can just say format, and then you can say date, for example. And then you click in, and it gives you the reference to how you go about doing that. For example, here's the dates. You can use ISO, will give you this output. So when you use this date underscore style argument, you set it equal to this, your date will get this format. And as you can see, there's other formats here too. You can play around with. All right, I just want to introduce that. There's also, looks like there's some blogs. So I haven't really looked at these, but there's plenty of small stuff here you can look at and work with to get some ideas. Okay, so I'm back in my little world here for stock analysis. I have this code and I created this Quarto document. I can run individual cells or I can run the whole thing. So for now, based on the stock data we just imported, I'm just going to run the cells. So here I ran the first cell. And then the next one, I'm simply going to query DuckDB and format the output in a certain way. And then I'm converting the DuckDB query here into a polar data frame. Then I close the connection and then I display the data that occurs from this particular cell. So let me run that. So here you can see the output that query produces. Notice you have the symbol, you have the timestamp, and then you have open, high, low. And as you can see, because this is a polar data frame, you can see on the top, right under the column headers, you can see the type that it created for this data frame. So there's a bunch of 64s, which is probably an overkill. But also notice I created these two list objects at the very end there. That comes in, we got something we're going to look at when we actually run the table itself. So I got those lists by simply using the list object. This syntax here, you can see it. So there's two of them. Okay, now enough of that query. We'll see the results later here. All right, so I have two list objects at the very last columns. Then what I want to do is I want to start building my table. And what you can do is you can simply use this GT function and pass in in this case, my polar data frame called DB, and then show it. So it's going to pop up a table on the side here. So let's run that. So as you can see, there's the raw table. And as you can see, it's not very good looking right now. And we can improve on this by start attacking these different parts of the table. What you can see here, I'm passing in this first table here to this next table structure, if you will, called tab 2. Now, I want to start building it, so I want to create a header, put a title in, and a subtitle like this. Then I want to format the currency columns, and I'm basically passing in the columns I want to format using a currency. All right, and as you can see here, I'm also formatting a number for the volume, and I format the percentage for the return with 2 decimals, as you can see. So let's run that and see what that looks like. Okay, so as you can see, I formatted this percentages for the returns, and the volumes are number format like this. So 1.3 million, is that what it is? In any event, you can see it formatted the dollars here with 2 decimals, and it also has this by default, it produces this ISO date. Okay, so now I got some basic formatting done, as you can see here. So one thing we can also do, we can, based on these list objects, as you can see over here, all these numbers. So this is the returns, you can see in percentage terms, for each month of that year. And this is the adjusted close prices. So you can see this is the 186.34, which was the last price, as you can see here, which is this one. So what I want to do is I'm going to create some plots, and in Great Tables you have this format nano plot functionality. There's much more to this, but you have to, if you hover over here, you can see there's a bunch of stuff you can do. You can do line plots, you can manipulate the whole thing, you can have reference lines, you can pass in the mean and stuff like that. So go to the reference section in the Great Tables and look at what you can do. Now the column I want to fix is this adjusted list, and I want to just make it a bar plot. Here I'm creating the rate of return. I'm using a line, and I'm overlaying the reference line by the mean. So that will create that plot. So when I run this, as you can see, now I generated these two plots, and they're interactive. So when you hover over it, you can see the numbers showing up. And also here, you can see the reference lines and play around with it. So yeah, that's nice. Get a little plot there. So you can create these sparkline plots if you want to. Now this last cell here will do a lot of the additional formatting. So let's just look at it quick. Here I'm creating a list of these columns, and then I'm basically renaming some of the labels. Whenever you refer to the underlying data, You have to refer to the original labels. You can't refer to it like this was the original label. This was the original label. And now I'm just putting it as date, but that's just synthetic sugar on the top of this table. But in the background, it refers to this. So make sure when you manipulate these, you use the right field name. Here I'm creating a new table, passing in the old table. And then what I want to do is I want to use these column labels that I just created here, up here with the new values. Then I do a tab option, a table options. I create this width because I'm going to spool it as a HTML, so I want it to be a little bigger. Then I'm creating a style, a table style. I'm passing in this list, and basically I'm saying for the text, I want it to be bold, and the color I want to be light gray. So this is going to affect that first column because I know it by using locations for lock body, which I imported in the beginning up here. There's lock here. By using that, I can use a polar and find that position in the table. And that's what I'm doing here by this selector starts with symbol. So it finds this symbol column over here, this one right here. So that's how I will color that column, and I will make it bold. Then I have some formatting dates, the timestamp. Remember, you have to refer to the original name. I want to use the ISO format, the number, and I want to do the volume. I want to make it more compact here because volume is in the millions. So I don't want it to look like this. I don't want these numbers to be so large. And then I have the significance set to 3. You can look at documentation for this. Then I'm just creating some column widths like this. I don't even know if this makes much of a difference, but if one column you need it to be wider, for example, dates here, you can set it to be, a little bigger than the others, for example. All right, so enough said on that. And then you can make a source note like this, and you can use markdown language. So you can also use HTML. There's another one you can import called HTML, and then you can write HTML directly in there. So I'm just doing some markup stuff with a bold and italic and so forth. Then you have this main parts here where you can really go to work over the table. You can say that font names, you can pad it, you can set the source note size and so forth. And just a bunch of stuff here. And then you can align your column, for example. And you can also be specific. I only want to align left, the symbol and the timestamp columns. Then you can create color ranges. And as you can see here, because these prices varies from, because I cut out the S&P 500, that's an index number. But now if you look at these stock prices, they go anywhere from, it's up in almost 500 here, as you can see. They're not really zero. So I could have gone much higher here, but I don't know what they started. And I don't want to be so specific either. And then for the return column, I'm doing this. I create this range from 0 to about 4%. So that's this return column down here. And, I have these palettes that I create from white towards green. So when it goes higher, it goes green. When it's lower, it goes white. And if you have no value, you can use NA color like this. All right. So that's this last one here. So what I want to do now is I want to finalize this by running the final preview, if you will. So when I run the preview, you can see it starts building here. It starts the kernel, it runs, and done. And then it finishes it, and it shows you the table here. Then what I can do is, which is another thing I want to show you before I move over to HTML. If you look at my stuff, notice I use this output false right under the Python cell, and that will not show you in the final HTML document. It won't show the output that this code creates. It shows you the code, but it doesn't show you the output. And I did that throughout here, as you can see, output false. But the very last one, that's the one I want to make sure I can see the whole table so it doesn't cut off or I have to use scroll bars. Notice I'm using column screen inset, and that tends to widen the whole thing. So I can create the container wider here using these tab options. So that allows me to make the last table much bigger or wider. So I can click this open in browser, and when I do, I'm getting this. And as you can see, this is all the code that I used to create this. Now I'll make this available in my GitHub, so you can take a look at it there if you want to. As you can see, here's the final one, and then it creates this table. So the table looks pretty cool. It has colors depending on the numbers you used. I have background colored the first column and I bolded it. I formatted the date to ISO date. I have a header. You can manipulate this. Notice down here I got a source node, much smaller, and I have these reactive little returns. I also have this monthly adjusted price and so forth. So you can create that. I also created a second table that I used data from World Bank. So that's this file, very similar to the other one here. Using Polar, I read a CSV file that I downloaded from World Bank. And this is the file that was downloaded, World Bank CSV. So when you open that and look at it, you're going to see that it's not all that clean. There's some of the data there. It's not all that clean. Let me see. Open an Excel here. So as you can see, there's all kinds of stuff in here. And there's these dot things. You see that? So in order to load this, I got rid of this column. I also used these country codes. What I had to do was to fix this up. And you can see there's almost the column headers are not very nice. And one thing I did, starting loading it here. Here is the position of the file. And then the null values, I say replace this with null values. And replace this, if it's 3 of them, this, and so forth. And then it cleans it out while it loads it. And then I'm dropping this column here. Then what I do is I create a filter because this table is pretty large. So I want to have just percentages. So I only filter for this guy. If you look at the actual sheet here, you can see this series here. They have all kinds for every country. So it has a lot of data in here. So I'm basically filtered by percentage that I was looking for, like this, I think it is. All right, so I do that and then create a years list object based on those columns. And then I concatenate this years with an alias of trend because I want to grab each year's data and put it into a list. So I want to grab all this stuff, all these numbers for that particular one and put it into a list object so I can plot it. So that's what I'm doing here. All right, and then I create an image folder. And what I had to do, I'm running this query here from, let me see if I can actually run this. So as you can see, this with statement here, I'm basically running the query against this address to get a file, a JSON file that is out there. So if you look at the JSON file itself, let me see if I can open it. So as you can see, when I run this JSON file in a raw format, it looks like this. So if you look at it, each country has an alpha 2 and an alpha 3. So this one has 3 letters and this has 2. So what I did was I downloaded some flags. So here you can see, here is my zip file. I downloaded these flags. I just went out there and I said, look for flag icons. That was free. And then I picked whatever size you want to use. I think this was 36 by 27. But notice the country code starts with 2 letters, AE, AD, and so forth, AF. So in order for me to be able to match that, because my table from the World Bank has 3 letters, I'm going to use that JSON file to match it so I can get the name and everything. And that's what I did. I went in here and then I ran this. And as you can see, the result, you get an icon, you get a name, alpha 2 and alpha 3. So I have basically the names of from that image folder, all the names of these images. And here's the name of the actual country. Here's the 2 letter, the one that matches this, and here's the 3 letter. So by doing this, I can combine these guys together and therefore I can create a column that I call icon that's basically have this. And as you can see here, this is what I'm doing in this data frame join here, and I'm using a left join, and I'm joining it right on the alpha 3. So that's this column right here. So by doing this, I can basically build this table here. So when I run this table, I create like this. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I just want to show you the end result. And as you can see, I create some headers here. I create what is called a spanner, where I label as country and country name. And I do a few other things in here that I just went through that builds the image. This will actually create the image icon in the first column. And I call it icon, and my path is here. And you use this format image to create it. So as you do this, you start looking for formatting of the data and so forth. And here I'm creating like a source node and the size of the container and some more formatting. I will include this in my repository so you can actually look at it more closely if you want to. So anyway, now when I'm done with that, I can actually create the HTML out of it. And so I can actually look and see what it looks like. So here is the World Bank HTML. So you see here, I got my different code snippets, as you can see. And let me make it a little bigger. So you can see here, and here's the code. And here you can see I'm running the query. And you should be able to see all this. But you can see it cuts off and use these scroll bars. And then I have the structure basic. And you use the flag icon here, insert it here. And then when it's all said and done, and you've done your formatting, this is what my table looked like. So as you can see, it has a nice flag column here. I removed the icon column header. I bolded everything. The only thing I notice is this series here is cutting off. Maybe it's because I made it so wide. Okay, now it's a little better. Okay, so as you can see, here's yet another great table you can create. I really hope you liked this video, and if you do, give me a like and consider subscribing to my channel. That'd be fantastic. Have a great night, great day, wherever you happen to be in the world, and I'll see you in the next video.